All right, all right. We're back again, friends. Monday morning. Hope that everyone had a good weekend. We got another great guest with us and Matt today for another episode of Just Shilling. But before we do get into it, everyone, just want to let y'all know that nothing that we share today is going to be considered as financial advice. This is a safe space, but we'll keep it kind of PC here. Anything that's too controversial for a family dinner during the holidays, we'll avoid those topics. But we're all adults here, and super psyched for a great conversation. And last but not least, anything that we share are the opinions of our own and do not necessarily represent our respective organizations. So, yeah, man, I'm super psyched to have you here. I know we chatted, gosh, it seems like a few weeks ago, and a lot changes in a few weeks in this industry for sure. So, let's give people a little bit of a background about who you are. And maybe even go back a little bit in time to, first how you got involved in the crypto space, because you do have a really interesting background, and then lead us a little bit up to like your 30-second minute elevator pitch of what you're up to now.
Sweet. Yeah. And thanks, Trevor, for having me. Happy new month, everyone. Happy Monday. So Matt Kielczewski here. I go by Crypto Matt K on X or really all social platforms. But to kind of answer your question a little bit more deeply, I was an event producer, entrepreneur, I guess, for 10 years prior to finding myself in crypto. I first found out about Bitcoin in 2017, and
Nice.
then you do the thing, like you buy it, it goes up, you get excited, and then like it goes down 80%, and I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. Like, but the cool thing is back then I purchased a um a festival ticket with crypto, and I got a $10 voucher in Bitcoin for
Wow.
Coinbase. At the time was giving out $10 credits for signing up for Coinbase. And my eye-opening moment was, I bought it in January, the festival ticket, I got the $10 credit. And then in by the time like June rolled around, when I went to check my Coinbase account, it jumped up to like $110. I was like, what the hell is this? Like, this is wild. So that was kind of my initial exposure to it. And, I'm buying music festival tickets with crypto. It's like funny to think about. But, fast forward, COVID happened. I, as an event producer, you rely on folks walking in through the door. Couldn't do that anymore. And
Yeah.
I had just been consuming so much about Bitcoin and Ethereum at that point, listening to all of the podcasts that I can, reading all of the books that I can. I just decided, like, why not jump into this feet first? I knew a couple people through the entertainment industry that already worked in this space. They helped me land a job at one of my first companies, which was essentially an NFT mill house. We were selling NFTs to all of the YouTubers, influencers, rappers, celebrities of the world. And that was very interesting at the time. It was effectively like 2021. This is like 4.5 years ago now, but 2021, we raised, at that time, it was just so hot. It was easy to raise millions of dollars on the open
Yeah.
market through these NFT sales. And eventually that project got, and we could talk about this, but this happens a lot in the crypto industry. Unfortunately, projects get rugged,
Yep.
um, tokens get stolen, war chests get hacked, and I had to pivot into another project, which I found again through another mutual friend, um, that put me on to doing social media management, content creation, blog post writing was huge at the time. Um, Community management for a lending protocol, DeFi lending protocol on Ethereum called TrueFi. Um, and TrueFi, I was there from like 200 million TVL to about 1.2 billion TVL and
And
1.2
for the folks
billion.
that are here, because we do might have some newbies, and we'll kind of break down these acronyms, because that's one of the things that we do in this space. We throw around these three-letter phrases, right? So for the folks that are new here, Matt, can you just share a little bit on like what does TBL mean?
Yeah, so zooming out, right? Like with these DeFi companies, protocols, projects, you start to throw around a lot of the acronyms that folks in traditional finance use. Um, but also, traditional finance folks, when they sit down with DeFi folks, a lot of the jargon just does not compute. So
Yeah.
we also created our own book of vocabulary, right? So TVL anyway stands for total value locked. Um, and then there's also TLO, which is total loans originated. So, as a protocol, TrueFi originated 1.2 billion dollars of loans out into the ecosystem. These were all uncollateralized loans, meaning that there was no um, collateral or anything backing these loans. It was kind of like given on the value of reputation, trust, and how your books look, really. So
Mm,
it's an SEC regulated company. They had venture capital backing it from A16Z, which is a big
no doubt.
VC venture capital firm in the space, and you had folks from TradFi working at this company, making sure that the accounts were polished up enough in order to give folks these loans, so that they actually had enough cash on hand in order to pay these loans back. Some other projects out there didn't have these books buttoned up, and when the market went belly up, 2021, FTX collapsed, and a lot of these loans that were out in the market, Tom gave a loan to Steve, gave a loan to John, and then next thing you know, like John couldn't pay back Tom and couldn't pay back
Hmm.
Steve, and the whole house of cards falls down, right? So thankfully, TrueFi wasn't one of those um, projects, but TLDR through a round of layoffs, brought us into the middle of the bear market. I was effectively acting as a one man um, social media management agency. Took my first stab at that. Did it for about 9 months, managing anywhere between 2 to 3 clients at a time. And then September of last year, I found Turn, interoperable. So for folks zooming out again, it's a bridge. If you have, Ethereum on Optimism and you want Ethereum on Base, you use Turn, and it sends those assets to the other chain for you in a very frictionless and seamless way. And I think the best way to describe this for people is like when you're out there and you want to convert your euro to USD on Revolut, and you press that button, there's a lot of plumbing that happens in the
Yeah.
background in order to make that happen. And
Yeah.
so, that's what we are effectively doing at protocols like Turn and all the other interoperable companies that are out there right now.
Fantastic. No, I love that. Thank you so much. That just brings us from the past to the present, right? And then we're going to be talking a little bit about the future as well too. So, for those that, as I mentioned before, maybe newer to the industry or just not really focusing or spending any majority amount of time in their day on social media, content creation, community management, and things like that, what does a typical day for you look like when it comes to managing socials and community for a blockchain protocol?
Good
Is
question.
there, is there even a such thing as a typical day, Matt?
I think like it depends how deep you are, right? If you're someone like me, and there's memes like this that float around, the Twitter X sphere everywhere. I think the most important piece here is to maintain some sort of structure in your life, right? Like you could be
Mm,
chronically online, consuming data, content all the time, but eventually, everyone reaches their cap, their limit. And if you continue trying to push beyond this limit, eventually you'll reach a burnout. So
yeah,
I'm, especially after being here for 4.5 years, I have burned out more than a few times. It's not something I recommend to anyone, because the reality is like after that, it's very hard to bounce back and get into it, right? And so you kind of need to take some time off in order to like lick your wounds, or just let the gaskets kind of like release
yeah,
some pressure a little bit. But what I generally like to say is, you carve out some time to act as a consumer, to act as someone that is kind of analyzing what's happening in the market, and kind of internalizing that, and seeing how you as a content creator or social media manager, content manager, can take
yeah.
that narrative and then apply it to the brand that you're working for, right? And so when it comes to consuming time and then strategy time, you really need to make sure that you set aside some time in order to actually be able to draft up that time, that content, because being creative is something that you need to actually like put your head down and focus on.
Yeah.
If you are having trouble dropping into that energy, into that flow state, you got to figure out what works for you to get there, right? So for me, I love going on bike rides. I love working out, helps clear the mind and kind of get the juices flowing. And generally, as I'm working out or as I'll pull over on the bike and literally just like type something in my phone real quick and keep going. But you want to be able to, as you drop into that flow, like tap into that energy and push that content out, or write down those drafts to call back on it later.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I resonate a lot with that because in my job I do some of this as well. That point that you made about being able to bounce back, right? I think that there's a particular type of individual or mindset that you need to be successful in this industry. I don't think that everyone is prepared for that initial kind of shock when you do officially become someone that is able to do this in this space. So how did you kind of have those moments when things weren't necessarily working out, or it wasn't coming at the pace that you wanted to? How did you bounce back, and how did you kind of reset yourself to kind of stay focused and grounded?
Yeah, it's really good, and it depends. Like when in there, everyone has their own arc, right? Or I always talk about like the user journey in crypto. You start out with Bitcoin, and then you learn about Ethereum, and then you get really interested in Solana and all the other
Yeah.
assets out there, but networks, chains out there. But as someone that works in this space, you also kind of go through your own little kind of arc, as someone that can be, for instance, really excited, bushy tail, like what is it, bushy eyes or bushy tail, you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
big eyes.
Right
And I
eyes, yeah.
that was me for the first I mean, especially when you're joining at like peak bull energy where there's money being thrown around, everyone seems to be making money, and you kind of want to stay relevant and be on top of that. So during those times, especially as someone that's new in the space, it's easy to kind of just get swept up in the wave and get carried away. But if you don't know how to swim, or you don't have some sort of life raft to take you out of the water when you get tired, that support, I think, is really key to have during those moments. I think when it comes to being grounded, you need to be able to kind of and picture yourself as someone that is sitting in the middle of a storm, especially with when you're working in marketing. Um, the perceived value of marketers goes up and down in waves as the market also makes its way through its ups and downs.
Yeah.
And it's very important to, you know, remember your worth in those moments, and also kind of learn to capitalize when there is this kind of upswing in the market or opportunity, right? For instance, right now I wrote this really long piece, and Trevor, you do a great job with writing content as well. I actually have a few of your posts kind of saved in a little WhatsApp thread that I have, to tap back into for job opportunities.
Yeah.
If you're out there right now looking for a job, or you're looking to get into the Web3 crypto space, like this is the prime time to get into it. Every single time I open up my LinkedIn these days, there are brand new job opening posts out there. And
Yeah.
I mean, it can almost even be overwhelming to just go and grab the link, put it in a WhatsApp thread or in your notes, whatever. Um, but you need to kind of like, again, going back to the being grounded, like where are my limits, how do I make sure that I am staying true to myself and my
Yeah.
self-worth during this time, and just like navigating through that, because you also don't want to this is something else that I've also done, during the bear market. I was spraying and praying, hoping that every person that I apply to would write me back. And
Yeah.
there is a point where you're interviewing too much, and you are 2 3 rounds into a company, and then you start to think like, oh god, I owe this exercise to this person, I have this third round where I have to present to this person, and now all of a sudden you're at capacity and you can't even remember who you need to present to, what deadlines you have, because when you're looking for a job, your job is to find a job, right?
Yeah.
And so you can only do a certain amount of, first round interviews, a certain amount of presentations per week before you start to kind of be like, whoa, where am I in this process with everyone? So look, I think like, the best piece of advice that I always heard is to be able to remove yourself emotionally from any sort of project that you are part of, because at the end of the day, like it's not your baby, and if you make it your baby when it's not yours, you can, um, set yourself up to get hurt. And I think
Yeah.
the most important, thing is to realize that, um, if you set that expectation for yourself at a reasonable level, you won't set yourself up for failure in that way, because that does lead to inevitably the burnout that we're talking about, to the stress and all of this stuff that really isn't sustainable in a culture and industry that runs nonstop 24/7.
Nonstop,
um,
24/7, 365 for sure. And that point that you mentioned, Matt, about the difference between being emotionally tied to something and being passionate. I think that they're similar, but they're very different, right? You can have all the passion in the world, but being able to remove yourself emotionally from things like that, especially when it comes to being tied to a particular project, I think that that's something. It's a skill that needs to be learned. Quite frankly, it doesn't happen overnight, but sooner or later it does. And I think that that's something that's helped me kind of keep my sanity. When we have these kind of market swings, and it's kind of that saying, right? Like, when in doubt, zoom out. Don't kind of think about the moment that we're in right now. Think about where we're going and where we already came from. And I think that's something as well too that kind of helps keep you grounded for sure. So from your experience talking about community, and I know that you have a multitude of different things that you've been doing in your role, but what do you feel is kind of the real value of community management when it comes to crypto projects, and how do we kind of keep these communities engaged and growing, when it's a bear market, when it's a bull market, or when things maybe that particular sector may be impacted by some negative kind of narrative or trend. How does this all work together?
yeah, so this is a very good segue. um, I do almost want to mention, before I answer that, like, setbacks are a common thing in tech, in technology. So
Hmm.
there's technology, and then there's people that are building financial instruments within the tech and all this, and then there's crypto and Web3. Setbacks exist here as well. I
Yeah.
think it's important, if anyone goes through a setback, to use that as an opportunity to really chisel out the skills that they learned before that setback happened, and use it as a launch pad in order to get them forward into whatever the next step is in their career. Now, in terms of like community management, I think this question is so important, because it it takes a very long time, and this is very relevant outside of crypto as well, to build
Yep.
trust. And it's very
Yeah.
quick. You can lose trust very quickly, and you can see folks across the ecosystem, crumble, due to erosion of trust. Now, like, what I d- depending on the cycle that you're talking about or where we're at, the most important thing that I always start with is showing up for your people.
Yeah.
The As long as you look to get 1% better every day, or you just show up and ask people how they're doing, check in with them, see what kind of feedback you have about the product or whatever vision you're building upon. um, these are the most important things, I think, when it comes to building an eco, whether it's an ecosystem or a product or a network. I was listening to a podcast yesterday. The co-founder of Baiju, or of Robinhood, his name is Baiju Bot. He was reflecting on back early 2015, when they only had like 100,000 users,
Oh
and
my
Robinhood
goodness.
is huge now. It's the biggest thing. Like, everyone knows about Robinhood, and they were back then. They were like can you please use our app? But
Yeah.
back then, and I remember going through this as well as a user, the industry didn't know, or the consumer at that point didn't understand what zero cost commissions meant. This is such a simple thing that we all pretend. So to give context to anyone that's tuning in right now, before Robinhood was created, this was also during like the '09, '08 crisis, and then the
Hmm.
subsequent Wall Street takeover, where like people were camping out, protesting Wall Street. Um, People were pissed. You couldn't. The cost of getting into the stock market to invest was so high. It
The
was higher
barriers of
for
entry.
the
Yeah.
exactly the average Joe couldn't participate in the equities market, and so Robinhood came along and they wanted to change that. Their main value proposition at the time was zero cost commissions. But when folks, they would go to, for instance, college kids and ask them like, "What do you think about this product?" They will always ask like, "What do you mean commission? Like, what does that mean?" People at the time didn't understand that a an average American user didn't know that every brokerage from the Fidelities, J.P. Morgans of the world would charge, let's call it an even $10 to make a trade on their platforms. That's
Hmm.
how these people were, raking money in
Oh
as
yeah.
businesses. And then there got a point, after interviewing people for years and repositioning the app and working on actually educating and changing the behavior of the incoming user. They were then able to literally take that market and flip it on its head. And it was only until like 2019, I think, that across the market all brokers
Yeah.
ended up dropping their $10 surcharge on making a fee on their platform. So I mean, Robinhood literally gutted the fee that people were having to pay in order to transact on the equities ecosystem. And there's all this other stuff that they did in order to lower the barrier of entry for folks too. But you wouldn't know that if you were just like telling your Silicon Valley VC funded devs to sit down and they'd be like, well, this is how I'm using the product, so that means everyone else must be doing
Yeah.
it too. It's a very narrow scope of user at that point. And so again, community management, sorry, long-winded way of answering this question, but it's like really like sitting down and talking with the person, getting to know them, and making sure that they are being taken through this Web3 journey, from new user to learning about the product to being an expert at using the product to then getting their friends to go and use the
Yeah.
product. And then you kind of like begin the cycle anew. And that's how you grow your user base, right?
Love
So
that. I love that. So, there's another thing too, right? There's community management and then there's community building, and these are quite different things. So, how would you say that these two things are different, in your opinion, from your experience, Matt?
community user, can you repeat that last part?
Community management versus, and we just talked about that too, versus like community building.
Got it. Got it. So yeah, so community management is kind of like what I just described, but community building wise, again, talking about that user flow, that user journey, whether it's through, you're hosting AMAs, you're hosting dev shops for devs to learn how to use your product. This all falls under community building. I think one of the best ways that I like to paint a picture for folks is, for instance, leaning into spaces on Twitter or live streams like what we're doing here, or what you guys also do on Wednesdays, right? Um, Sitting down and I'll use X Spaces, Twitter Spaces as a model here for reference right now. It's effectively it's an audio. You get everyone together to sit down in a digital room. You pick a topic. You invite folks that are experts in that topic to talk about the topic, and whether it's me or whoever the host is, we'll sit down and go through either flowy conversation like what we're having, or they have pre-written questions to ask the audience, or the speakers. These folks will do there's a few things that are at play here, right? You have brand recognition and awareness.
Hmm.
You have content creation for the brands that are involved. You have community building, so the communities that are involved on all sides, on all parties involved, actually get like cross community um, collaboration, and folks from one community, if they're interested in another product that's sitting on stage, they could click through and smash that follow button and learn more about the projects that are speaking. And there's also, from the BD side, the projects that are on stage that are speaking about what they're building and adding value to the topic at hand. If they vibe with each other on stage, they're able to kind of like slide into the DMs of
Yeah.
of the person that's on there. Hey, I really like that point that you made. Like, you want to hop on a discovery call soon? Like, would love to learn more about what you're building at your company. And so, that opens up another avenue, can of worms, funnel, however you want to call it, to invite partnership opportunities, invite collaboration opportunities of these products to actually like help not only grow, their stance and awareness in the ecosystem, but revenue generation. All of these things start to fall into place after that.
Yeah.
So from the community building standpoint, I'll end after this, but it's like you're building effectively a flywheel. So flywheels, if you
Hmm.
think of like a pinwheel, this thing starts to build, and it builds on itself. You start doing it, you know 2-3 months down the line, all of a sudden you have hundreds of thousands of impressions on all of your spaces, and you've had tens of thousands of people tuning into your spaces because you've built that presence for yourself. So
Yeah.
cool
Now, this is
thing.
a really good segue as well too, because I wanted to get your opinion a little bit onto like the importance of storytelling, right, when it comes to marketing for any particular crypto project. So, can you talk a little bit about just the importance of that? Alluding to or building up on a little bit what we just mentioned, but also too, can you share a particular time that you can think of when a good story really moved the needle, whether that is into marketing efforts or to partnerships or just to kind of being able to create business development on your own as well too, from the action that you took when you were doing these type of different marketing campaigns and social media type of related activities.
So these kind of fall into two buckets. From a very high level, for folks that are tuning in, there's projects out there that have not done their TGE. So TGE stands for token generation event. And then there's projects that have done their TGE, meaning that they have launched their token, they have time in market, and they have folks that are actively holding that native token or asset, however you want to call it. And it also has its correlating price action, right? Folks that are pre TGE focus on the North Star. Usually, what it is some sort of product launch or mainnet launch or token generation event. And throughout this time, you want to garnish effectively a as big of a user base as you can that gives you feedback, that provides value to help make your, let's call it, testnet product as bulletproof as possible. And over time, these people start to make their way through that trajectory of the community user that I was describing, right? So, they become active users on the product. They're
Yes.
able to kind of provide feedback, bug reports, things like this. And you start to build a relationship with that person, digitally. And then they kind of give you that feedback that you could then take to the team in order to improve the product, right? Um, so this is all very important because, going back to like that Robinhood example, it allows the reiteration in real time and leveling up of said product in order to get it as ready as possible for that mainnet launch, for that token generation event, right?
And can you
So
talk a
that
little bit too, maybe for those that are hearing about this TGE for the first time, because there's another acronym out there that we use as well too, ICO, right? So, what are some of the similarities and maybe differences between those type of two things when it comes to just where the project is in their life cycle?
got it. So just putting a pin that there is also the post TGE that we can dive into later as well. With the pre TGE component, there are a few ways that you can go about doing these launches. There are IDOs, ICOs, and um, I'll just stick with the IDOs and the ICOs, right? So IDO stands for initial DEX offering. and ICO stands for initial coin offering. So effectively, both of these are mechanics that allow users to buy into or invest into these assets before the token generation event actually happens. And so stuff like this is very similar to what an IPO is, an initial public offering on the equities market. So for
Yep.
instance, if there's a company out there that has a really good product, they've been, it's a revenue generating business and they have the books to prove it, and they're willing to become compliant to the guidelines that are listed in order to get listed on a public equities market, like they apply for the IPO. And folks that are accredited investors, usually it means you have like a $1 million net worth or $100,000 minimum buy-in. They can go ahead and buy that stocks or shares of that said IPO at essentially a discounted strike price, meaning a discounted price of the market price at launch, right? So if you have a stock that is going to be worth $1 on the IPO, these investors are able to buy in at, let's say, 50 cents or 25 cents, whatever the structure is there. But that's generally how it works in the equities market, the stock market, right? Now, take that knowledge and apply it to crypto Web3. You have these pre-launch opportunities, whether it's through launch pads or now a lot of centralized exchanges are
Yep.
offering these launch pads. So, and again, because this is more of an unregulated kind of wild west market, a lot of these launch pads and their constituents have reputations that are attached to them, sort of like histories and trajectories that are attached to them. So you kind of need to be careful where you place your money in these situations. But again, we're not here to talk about financial advice. Like, we're here to just kind of describe like what the
Yeah, of course.
IDO and the ICO is. But so, you can use these effectively launch pads for these IDO opportunities, or these centralized exchanges for these ICO opportunities. The acronym ICO also comes from like way back when Ethereum went live. They were also kind of doing these pre-sale opportunities to now Ethereum holders, but also all the altcoins that came with that. So you can look into this if you're curious about it. If you're tuning in, you can ask like Grok or Chat GPT to kind of give you the history of that. But
Yeah.
effectively, those are kind of ways that tokens or companies also can focus on raising funds to help extend the runway of their project if they're not looking to procure a fundraise, secure a fundraise through VCs, for instance, venture
I love
capital.
that. No, I love that, Matt. And this brings it to another point as well, too, right? Being able to kind of to balance this, excitement versus kind of the hype side of kind of marketing for your particular crypto project, right? So, can you talk a little bit about that and the need to have clear and honest communication, and then maybe we can also talk on something as well too that once again, this is not financial advice, but it does happen, right? And I think that people in our communities need to be aware of a pump and dump, right? Because I think a lot of time people come into this, there's a lot of marketing. People have all these KOLs, they have these influencers, and everything sounds really great, but people aren't looking into the actual project, the tokenomics, the structure of things to really kind of have that education to know whether or not this might be not, I'm not going to say a good or bad investment, but if there's even an opportunity for them to even have a shot, right? So can you talk a little bit about that on your own opinion?
Yeah, so I think first I'll open by saying, look, if it's too good to be true, it probably and most likely is. I, for instance, to give myself as an example, last bull market, bought some token on AVAX. It was called like Snowflake or something. And you had to like transfer one token to another token. And then you were able to stake it on this protocol. And this protocol really literally had a calculator that showed how much APY you were able to earn. So how much interest you were able to earn on that token. And it was so long that it literally went off the screen. Like it ran out of, it was in like the 9, 10, 12 digit, in interest in returns. So like, and then obviously, later on you go to try to take your money out, and it doesn't let you because
Whew.
that's how the contract was set up and all of your money's gone. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe that Lambo calculator on that one project wasn't such a good idea. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'll start off by saying that, secondly, yes, we are a meme driven culture. And I think that it's great that that helps with mass adoption and mind share and getting this into the minds of folks that are not accustomed to what, crypto is. But that being said, like, again, you know, there's a lot of cash grabs out there these days, especially on the meme coin front, with folks that have gone viral. A very recent example that's actually happening like right now, I think even like today. There's the kid that was doing the boat aura, like he was on the front of the boat in
Oh,
Indonesia
yeah.
or Malaysia or whatever, and he's doing
Yep.
his little dance, and it was cool, and like it was all
Laura
over the
farming
internet.
kid, right?
Exactly. So that I don't even Boat Kid or something is his name, but he's about to launch a token, and I'm not, again, not financial advice, but it's like you see this time and time again. Hawk Tuah girl launched a token; she's nowhere to
Yeah.
be found now. Like this happens, where people get rinsed through these opportunities, and um, the reality is you don't get rich quick. You could try, but most of the time, 99.99% of people like do just fail, and
Mhm.
the way these things work is that they have, a bunch of people behind closed doors that get allocation of these tokens, and then they wait for it to pump to a certain point, and then they just like floor it, and the whole thing drops. And so, um, honestly, I don't even remember the like question that you asked, but I think like it's just very
No,
like
it's
point.
good because we covered a lot there, right? And I think it's really important for people to understand, right, that no matter what you're going to get involved in, it's by having conversations like this or being part of conversations like this. The education never stops, right? There's always going to be something new out there, right? There, unfortunately, when it's a very interesting industry such as this is, with a lot of potential to make money, there are going to be people that are going to try to, no matter what you do, for every good person, there's five bad people, right? There's always going to be someone out there that are going to try to take advantage of someone, and it's up to us as a community, in an ecosystem, to educate other people to be aware of what you're getting involved in, right? And yes, there was a lot of flack for some of the legal enforcements that the SEC and other agencies were taking up on the crypto industry a couple of years ago. But for a lot of that, right, we we kind of have to look at ourselves and internalize and say, like, what were we putting out there? Like, we were allowing a lot of these kind of projects to get a lot of traction out there, and shame on us, right? We could have done a better job internally, of being able to maybe even police ourselves in the industry. But I think that we're at a turn here. So I wanted to shift to the next question as well too, right? You've done marketing, you've done community management, you're doing business development. Talk to me a little bit about, what do you think are maybe just one mistake, that you see projects making over and over when it comes to community engagement, or whether it's business development?
I can't. My mind immediately goes to trust. That was something that I was referencing on Spaces over the last few months. And again, like you could be at a project and be building for months, years, and um, you really need to make sure that as a project, your comms, your communication, and the strategy around that communication is as buttoned up as possible, so that you don't get caught in a situation at some arbitrary point in the future where you get called out on that strategy, on that communication, and your strategy in that moment is different than what you said months ago or years ago.
Yeah.
um, what I mean by that is, communities, I mean, anyone in the world doesn't like this, but when you're dealing with digital communities that are by the tens of thousands of people, um, and I've seen this happening a lot recently. You the project will say something, and then they'll go back on their word, and so it's kind of like being in a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
You're dating each other, everything's good, you're going to dances together, you're whining and dining, and you're in this honeymoon phase, and then it like comes down to business, and
Yeah.
you want to build a house together, you want to build a home together, and then all of a sudden, like, these cracks start showing of like, oh, actually, like, I'm an alcoholic, or whatever it
Hmm.
is. It's like silly, but But
Yeah.
silly analogy, but it's true. Like, hey, these are I have this fault and this fault, and you didn't actually know about it during like our initial dating phase, and so or people will make a promise, projects will make a promise, and they'll go back on that promise, and a lot of the times you see, you know, users get very hurt by this, and
Yeah.
so they'll feel disappointed, unheard. I mean, the biggest thing for me, especially, is like I always want to make sure that the people that I deal with or the communities that I'm building feel like their voices are being heard and their opinions are being heard. Because as a community manager, you want to act as someone that is the bridge between the team and the community, right? Or even when you're a marketing head of marketing person, you need to have that ear to the ground and really listen to your community managers, your mods, the folks that are feeding you that information, and act on it. Otherwise, people will just have their expectations. Again, we were kind of talking about that as a worker, but also as a community member. If you expect something and then that project, under delivers, or they go and completely disappear on you, for instance, um, it puts a very bad taste in people's mouths. And what I've noticed is that there's like this clash of titans in the space right now. You have community members that help build test nets, and you have project builders that are kind of effectively bringing these products to market.
Mm,
And these folks are putting down their own resources, time, money, in order to help make these products bulletproof. And then the folks that are building these projects that are super worried about runway, or super worried about making sure that their board of directors or whatever is happy, because they also have stakeholders that they need to keep at bay or peaceful or whatever. It's a very fine line between these two, to like keep the community happy and your VCs happy, right? Um, and so a lot of the times projects will just write people off as, or the users off as like, oh well, they just want free money, and they just want that airdrop so they can get out of here. Like, from what I've learned, like, yes, a certain portion of the people that get the airdrop will go and run in the opposite direction because they got the free money. But what it really does, actually, when it's well executed, is that it solidifies those folks that have been there since the beginning, and they actually take those funds and use it to help propagate or push the protocol forward when it is time for that main net, for that real use case in the market. And they stick around for a lot longer, and then they end up being your kind of loudest voices during times where the team is offline, or there's some sort of uncertainty around what the product is and things like this. So yeah, very, very important thing. And I think at scale, if we worked as together as an industry and kind of help these two forces like meet in the middle a little bit more, I think we would have a lot more, not only successful projects and happy communities, but just projects with long lasting market share.
I love that. One of the other things that I wanted to touch upon as well, too, right? From your perspective, when it comes to business development, how do you evaluate that potential partner, and whether or not it's worth pursuing? I think that this is something that's really, really important for folks that are trying to get into, a role such as the one that you've been in yourself, right? Like, kind of help us get a perspective around that, because there's so much noise. There are so many different products out there, and as you mentioned too, right? Like, individuals in a business development role, they also have to do a lot of kind of due diligence to make sure that they're putting their reputation on the line, they're putting their organization on the line, they're putting their sometimes their community even potentially at risk as well too. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that, Matt?
Yeah, I'll offer some very basic, like 101 insights here. If someone is like blowing you up on the Telegram, calling you incessantly on Telegram, like they kind of popped out of nowhere and are offering you, the sun and the moon, like chances are they're not going to, well, A, chances are they're a scammer. B, chances are they won't be around for that long because they are actively using their Telegram account to spam other people inbox messages, which will eventually get their account flagged and deleted because they're marked as a bot or whatever. So these kind of like ruthless, predatory, and I mean, just downright annoying business development or sales tactics that are out there generally don't work.
Mm,
And they don't lead to anything good. So again, like if it's too good to be true, or if you're being pressured for time, this is another thing that also goes into like Web3 security, like
yeah.
tech security. If someone's like pressuring you about time, or like I need an answer now, and like you don't even know who they are, like chances are it's a scam. Like if they ask you to click the link, that link could be a malicious link that opens
Yeah.
up malware on your computer. But anyway, in terms of analyzing folks, here, so let's go down a layer in the onion. If I actually go and find someone that has, for instance, a project on Twitter, that on X, that I think is somewhat reputable and has, active followers, active timeline, people commenting, them replying to those comments, like, okay, cool, let's jump on a call. If they jump on a call and they don't want to use their camera, or they don't want to tell me their
Mm,
name, like we're not in this era of anon, camera off, like vibes anymore. Like I'm sorry, but if you're trying to do business with me and you want to make money together, and you don't tell me your name or where you are in the world, or at least show me your face, chances are I'm not going to do business with you, and most likely that call will be our last call. um, so there, you kind of need to do a lot of instinctual, like, gut checks throughout this process as well, like a lot of the things that I just listed. But in terms of due diligence as well, there are BD communities that you can go out and find on Telegram, on LinkedIn. They don't exist as much on LinkedIn. I know that a lot of this user base is LinkedIn focused, but what you want to initially do is, as you reach out to these folks on X, you want to convert the conversation back to Telegram or Discord. A lot of people talk on Discord as well. I found that for business development, talking on Telegram or email, once you get to a point where you're actually talking about money and stuff, is a very important kind of funnel to work for yourself. But a lot of the actual initial engagement and chatting and all of that stuff happens on the Telegram group chat initially. Um, so yeah, I'll pause there. Did that kind of help answer the question a little
No,
bit?
that's really good. And man, I honestly I could talk to you forever. I know we're coming up on time here, but I did have a couple of more questions before, because I think this is honestly like a master class for anyone that's in marketing, or community management, community building, even business development, right? So what is your advice, Matt, for someone who wants to get started in crypto community or BD?
Oh yeah,
Brand
so that was
spanking new.
yeah.
Obviously, I would say one, rewatch this video if you haven't had a chance to tune in live. But just some kind of words of wisdom for anyone that's looking to possibly pursue a career, whether they have knowledge of the space or they don't.
So I've been there, and my best advice for anyone that's tuning in that is in that space is, like, take whatever fear you are feeling about DMing someone, about commenting on someone's post, and just like throw it out the window. You want to focus on authenticity and kind of creating your own voice for yourself on these platforms. So on Twitter, I have a very kind of well carved out DM approach that I do. And eventually you kind of, feel it out, and you just talk to the person as if it's like, your own self talking to
Yeah.
another person. But, there's that fear initially because you've never used the platform before, or the app or whatever. I mean, the reality is, like, even if you're a founder, and that's the coolest thing about Twitter X, is that you can go in and actually hit that person in the DMs, and most likely, if it's a founder or someone that is building a product, they're happy to talk to you, as long as you're not a jerk, right? Or as long as you're
Yep.
not like begging for something off the rip. Like, obviously approach it like you would a stranger on the street. Like, hey, how are you? How's your day? I really like the content that you're putting out. I really like your product. I like how it approaches these problems and solves these, or gives you these solutions for these problems. Like, you want to kind of open in a warm way, and do an intro, do a positive thing, and then you could kind of switch for an ask.
Mm.
So yeah, like add value, then go for the ask. Whether
So
it's
don't just DM someone and say, "Hey, want to do business?"
yeah, I just launched a token. You want to buy it? Or something like that. Like that doesn't
I'm
work.
doing X. We do this. Let's work together. It's like, is
Yeah.
that the way a normal relationship works? I think that that's unfortunate that sometimes people, that we work in a very digital oriented type of industry that we still sometimes forget that there's another person on the other end of that line, right? And kind of going back to the golden rule, right? Treat people like you want to, and these things don't necessarily come immediately, but when you put the time into it and you do it the right way, I think that the results are a lot more rewarding long term than maybe that kind of short term quick hit. So let's talk a little bit like this last couple of minutes here, in terms of kind of what you're currently up to, some kind of things that you're thinking about right now and your career and looking ahead, what are some of the trends that you're seeing right now, whether that be in community marketing, business development, that are going to kind of really define where our industry is headed within the next year or so.
Yeah, so last thing I want to talk about with the BD stuff or new person in Web3 crypto, like also try to tap into as many Telegram groups that you can out there. There's a lot of closed groups, but there's also a lot of open groups. And eventually you'll be able to filter out the noise and all the people that are like moon boys and stuff like that, and you'll find your valuable players that you can kind of rub shoulders with. But again, it takes time. It takes, nurturing that skill.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of like where I'm at, look, I'm out there on the market looking for my next role. Content, BD are my passions. But I would love to use this opportunity. As I kind of pivot into my next role to expand my career. I want to continue
Yes.
growing as an individual in the Web3 space. You take moments of transition, like I was mentioning earlier. If you're going through any setback or anything like that, you want to use it as an opportunity to capture whatever skill set you learned and use
Yeah.
it as leverage to launch you into the next opportunity. And generally what that comes with is a bump in the role, a bump in the salary expectations. Like a lot of these kind of expansive growth opportunities come with that. You just really need to believe in yourself to be able to engage in that, right? And as someone, if you're here new, again, like I've been through this kind of bull bear cycle, also transition period. This would probably be like my fourth time. It happens like about once a year generally for folks that are kind of like navigating through the Web3 space, and you're
Yeah.
kind of like building brand new project. Like first of all, it's tough to just go and land yourself a job at like a layer 1, layer 2 foundation. They don't just hire anyone out the door. There's also there's hundreds of jobs that are open out there for folks that are building their startup, their protocol, that have under 100 employees. Like that, I think, is the majority of the space that you're kind of walking into. So, in terms of where I see trends, yeah, it's a wonderful thing when you see folks like Coinbase or USDC. All of the stable coins that are out there right now are literally just hitching their bandwagon onto the backs of these credit card companies,
Yep.
financial product companies. They're all being able to kind of like seamlessly integrate now the web 2 traditional finance world
Hmm.
into this Web3 DeFi world, and it's honestly it's a wonderful thing. And so folks out there are able to in a seamless way just use their credit card, swipe, and earn Bitcoin rewards. Like that's a fantastic thing. Um, but again, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for kudos to the administration that's in the U.S. right now, and just like the
Yeah.
fact that frameworks are being passed and politicians are really lawmakers are actually like talking about this stuff now.
Hmm.
So yeah, trends like stable coins, AI is a major player in the game now. Everyone's talking about it. It's obviously a buzzword, but I think the thing is like, how are people implementing the use of AI or agent technology in their products is something that you need to be cognizant of and see like, oh, they're actually doing something different versus like these other 20 projects that are just kind of like copy pasting each other. Like that's also a thing to keep an eye out. But
Yeah,
yeah.
copy pasting happens. Quickly to just touch up on before we do wrap it up. Like
Mhm.
how are you using or thinking about AI in terms of being able to kind of even impact, your day to day and your roles and responsibilities?
Yeah, great question. It's actually like I'm coming across this. So anyone that's interviewing right now, this is like one of the major questions that a lot of companies are asking. I would say like 9 out of 10. Um, they all ask like, how are you incorporating AI into your day to day life or into your
Hmm.
workflows? And my advice is like show up with a list of products and tools and suites that you're actively using or you're looking to learn about because you want to be able to provide that value, right? Again, like value, and then ask. So,
Yeah.
show them that you use them, show them how you use them, and maybe incorporate it into your interview exercise, and then you can ask like, "Hey, do I get the role?" So,
Yeah.
but but yeah, I mean, look, like every tool has its perks. Every tool you want to use for different things. Like for instance, Grok is fantastic for real up to date information of like what's going on X, what's the sentiment, what's the vibe. You also as a product, as a company, and this is a fantastic thing that I've been sharing with folks that I've been interviewing with. As a marketer, you can go and feed your X articles section. Effectively, it's like your projects, your profiles, blog section, the data that you want Grok to consume and use as it indexes
Yes.
itself. So it's no longer SEO; it's called GEO now, and folks are using this GEO vertical for to just share a perfect example on X. Like you can literally use your articles. It's effectively, if the articles is empty, it's the same thing as having your blog section on your website as empty.
Yeah.
And so you feed it all of the information of the communication, the marketing, the strategy, the positioning, who your target audience is, all these things into that section, and Grok will actively use that as a means of teaching the people that research about you about your product or project or ecosystem. It's a very fantastic thing that I think folks should become very aware of and start utilizing in real time. Because if you don't use it, all that Grok will do is just grab whatever the most recent either hit piece or
Hmm.
press releases, like all that stuff. So it could be as long ago as like last year, and it'll use that as the most up to date information. So big gap there to improve on.
It's really funny. When I first started using AI and implementing it into my workflows as well too, I used to kind of think of it as like this robot, or this entity that wasn't, obviously self-aware or anything of that nature, right? But now I'm starting to kind of think of it more as a companion, right? I don't assume that it doesn't know anything, and I speak to it at a very high level, and I think that a lot of this is that over time it starts to understand your patterns, like the kind of things that you vibe with, the kind of things that resonate with you. So it's really really interesting. And if you're not using these emerging technologies, I think that in the industries such as Web3, crypto, blockchain, you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage, right? Time waits for no one in this space, and a day in crypto is like a weekend or maybe a month in any other industry. So
Mhm.
speaking of time, we've gone over a bit here, Matt, but I think this has been a very insightful conversation. I'm glad that we got a chance to finally connect, and we'll probably have to get a chance to have another conversation because there's a lot that we didn't get to. But for all of those that are here, thank you so much for joining. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation and really leave this motivated to implement some of these tips and techniques into your own workflow, and come back again for another incredible episode of Just Chilling. And Matt, for those that are out there that are looking to get in touch with you, or prospective employees that are out there that are getting a chance to review this and are like, what, we want an awesome guy like this on our team, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you, Trevor. And again, awesome, just chilling a little opportunity here. Great to just chill with you. Um, yeah,
Yeah, right on, man.
Matt Kielczewski is my name at the bottom there. I know it's super tough, but just type in Matt K on LinkedIn. Chances are I'll pop up. Um, and I'm Crypto Matt K, again, Crypto Matt K across all socials. So if you want to hit me up on Telegram, X, Discord, that is my handle. So lovely time to chop it up with you, Trevor. This was awesome. Great way to start my week, man. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. And thank you, and thank you everyone that got a chance to tune in live. I know that You could be doing a million things in the world, but you chose to be here with us today. So I appreciate all of you. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye, everyone.